Governor, everybody wants to know about Amazon. We talk a lot at Bloomberg about Amazon. Can you give us any insight? Is Boston going to get the second headquarters?
Well, I certainly think Amazon's going to have a presence here one way or another. They already have several thousand employees here. They're adding several thousand more in a building that's going to go up right down the street from here. And I certainly think they appreciate what we bring to the table, which is a wonderful collection of tech talent clusters, terrific environment generally, a great place to raise families, and we have terrific public schools and great communities, and I fully expect we'll be in the hunt.
I want to follow up on that. When you were elected, we had that awful winter, 2015-16. We all still remember it.
Some of us will never forget it.
That's true, including me and you. You had pledged at the time that you were going to fix public transit, the MBTA. I take the commuter rail into Boston every day. I have delays. There are mechanical problems. I know there have been some improvements, but if we get Amazon, are we going to be ready?
Well, actually today I was over inspecting some new Orange Line cars that will be starting to land at the end of this year, and then will land continuously along with new Red Line cars for the next several years. And we're talking about 50% increases in both the Orange Line and the Red Line. And about 2 weeks ago, we spec'd out a proposal to increase capacity on the Green Line by another 50% over the course of the next decade. And we're also making investments all the time in the commuter rail. I happen to think that these investments are good ones. All in, we're talking billions of dollars in infrastructure around public transportation. But we also have a Futures Commission that's taking a look at what the next act over the next 10, 20, 30 years is going to look like in transportation. And I have a feeling that's going to have some elements in it around the electrification of transportation, autonomous vehicles, and all the rest that will probably also change the game. But I believe we'll be well suited to deal with whatever comes with respect to employment and growth.
What about the investment that you have to make?
By the way, I'd rather have this problem than the alternative problem, which is not having to deal with growth, not having to deal with the highest number of people working in state history and things like that.
Problems aside, what about the investment of billions that you're making in incentives to woo the likes of Amazon to come here? You did it for GE as well, and now GE itself finds itself in not the most sunnier climes in terms of its business outlook. Is it worth it?
Well, we're not making billions of dollars of investments in companies. We're making billions of dollars of investments in our communities. And those investments that I was just talking with Tom about, those are going to, transportation investments will be available to everybody. With respect to GE, we basically made a deal with them where we agreed to make a significant investment in property that we already own that they then would be able to occupy. But it's still our property, and I think in some respects those are the right kinds of investments. Those are ones that either benefit the Commonwealth or benefit the public, and those are typically the kinds of investments we prefer to make.
Talking about property, I want to ask you about your regulatory outlook for the likes of Airbnb. I mean, we're building technology here, but sometimes the regulatory environment isn't always as welcoming as giants like Airbnb would wish. You've been pushing this, Marty Walsh has been pushing it as well. What do you foresee in terms of that business and how it can function in Boston?
Well, I'm sort of use the Uber and Lyft example as a precursor. We came up with what I think was the right framework for Uber and Lyft to be able to operate here, or any other transportation networking company 2 years ago. And last year in 2017, there were 65 million transportation networking rides in Massachusetts, which is obviously a gigantic increase over previous periods. And on the Airbnb piece, my view is kind of the same, which is what we ought to do is try and come up with a regulatory model that for those people who are simply using it once in a while as a platform to support a summer house in the Cape or something like that, fine, by all means, be my guest. But if you're going to be renting that room out or that apartment out 150 nights a year, as far as I'm concerned, you're in the hotel business, and you ought to pay the same tax that a hotel operator pays.
Caroline, we know in Boston that the mayor's had a bit of a tussle with Airbnb. He's just come out with a new ordinance, proposed ordinance, that says we are not going to tolerate these multiple unit owners, so-called stealth hotels. Do you support what the mayor's doing in Boston? Will we see this across Massachusetts? if you own many units, you're not going to go through Airbnb in this state?
No, I think the way it ought to work is it ought to be some sort of statewide standard that applies to everybody. That's easier from a regulatory point of view, and it's certainly easier from a business point of view. But I share the mayor's frustration with people who literally are purchasing units or renting units simply to turn around and flip them and make them Airbnb units. That's not what developing housing here in the city of Boston is supposed to be all about, and I'm sympathetic to his concerns.
Would you
on that.
outlaw those units across the state?
I think what's going on in Boston is a reflection of what I would describe as hotelier behavior on the part of people who are buying and renting these units, and I have sympathy for that. What I think we ought to be able to do is solve this problem statewide, come up with a formula that works for everybody. But if you're going to be in the hotel business, you should pay hotel taxes just like everybody else. And a lot of those folks, for all intents and purposes, are in the hotel business.
Let's stick with the regulatory theme here, because there's been a change to the regulatory environment. So that yesterday we understand the Supreme Court will be allowing betting on sports. What's the reaction of Massachusetts? Is this going to be a state that might adopt that?
I think we need to think. Look, I think we should take it seriously. We had a leadership meeting with the legislature yesterday where we started talking about this. We're obviously going to talk to Major League Football, baseball, hockey, basketball, and all the rest, and get their sense about this thing. We'll probably talk to the big platforms like DraftKings, which is located here in the Commonwealth, and we'll also talk to the folks who are in the casino business and get their sense about this. But it's hard for me to see how we could ignore this and choose not to pursue it.
Are we going to see a commission established for this? Who's going to police all this? You thought that out yet?
I think that depends a lot on the nature, on what type of industry we end up supporting from a statutory point of view. Depending upon where we land, you'd use one model or another. But I certainly think it's something that's going to be on the radar and people are going to take seriously.
I mean, speaking with
people will be in the position where they'll literally be betting on games while they're going on. And the whole notion of what's going to be possible under this is dramatically different than having sports books in Vegas, period. I mean, this is a much more significant expansion.
It seems to me, Governor, that it's a lot like the marijuana business. It's new, it's unexplored territory. We have a cannabis commission. They're talking about cannabis cafes, all kinds of things, but it's slow going. Do you see that sort of process evolving with betting, sports betting?
Maybe. I mean, I'm of the opinion that slow going on the cannabis law, as the Cannabis Commission is pursuing it, is the right way to go. Because there's still a lot of unanswered questions about how you police it, regulate it, and oversee it. And I think we'll have some of the same kinds of questions with respect to sports betting. But that said, it's certainly something we have to take seriously and engage in a pretty aggressive way with our colleagues in the legislature and with the folks who would be involved in the industry if it were developed here.
How are you engaging in terms of infrastructure projects, particularly gas pipeline projects? This is something that you yourself has got involved in. We've seen a few projects axed. Why? Is there a concern? Are we going to see more gas pipelines being built within Massachusetts and helping with the energy costs?
Well, a lot of that gets decided by the federal government, not so much by the states. I mean, the two big projects we have that are directly related to us right now is a big hydro project coming down from Canada and an offshore, deep water offshore wind project. Those are both over 1,000 megawatts. They're the two largest clean energy procurements in the state's history, and those are ones that we control through state statutes and are working with our colleagues in other states to pursue and to implement. And those are the ones that I believe we have the most control over. Some of the stuff with respect to gas ultimately gets decided by the feds.
Talking of clean energy, in California, they're focusing on making solar energy a real focal point, actually forcing it through. When you build a new home, you need a solar panel. Is that something that you would look at doing here?
Massachusetts has a really aggressive solar program, one of the most aggressive in the country. We support solar installations. The solar industry has been booming here for the better part of the past decade. I really want to get this hydro project done, this deep water project done, put a new regulatory framework that doesn't require a statutory update every year on the solar piece. We're also putting money in side by side with some of our researchers and private sector companies in storage, which has huge potential to take solar and wind to the next level, and that's really where I want us to focus our efforts in the short term.
Battery business in Massachusetts, we know from our reporting, is very robust. Are you satisfied with the progress we're making across the board? I know you've built-in elements of alternative energy. Energy can be very expensive, especially in a cold winter here.
Yes.
Are there other things on the table we might be interested in hearing about? Or?
Well, part of what makes the hydro project and the wind projects interesting to me, and I know to a lot of people in Massachusetts, is the price points on these are very competitive. They're 24/7. The hydro is 24/7, 365, and the wind piece can generate a heck of a lot of energy, especially if you firm it up with storage. And I think the possibilities associated with battery technology and storage in particular can do a lot to deal with polar vortexes, hot summer days, and the issues that really translate into very high prices, and also, in many cases, the use of very dirty fuels, which has been a huge issue.
Those of us who live in Massachusetts have watched Cape Wind come and go, finally go, but now there's a project.
Yeah, Cape Wind was never going to meet any kind of market test like these deep water projects will. And I think in some respects that's what makes these projects a lot more interesting. I mean, if you're pricing deep water wind at a price that's either pretty competitive with, or in some cases even better than what people are paying in the market now, that's a real win-win for the environment and a win-win for residential purchasers.
And I'll tell you, it's farther offshore, so you get less opposition from those who don't like to see windmills in the sky. Right?
This is deep water federal. This is deep water for the most part, it's owned by the feds.
Let's bring it close to home. Let's bring it right here where we are sitting in the Boston Chamber of Commerce, the celebration of technology. How are you going to ensure that Massachusetts as a state remains as open to technological advancement and remain a place where people can build businesses, as such as CEO of Wayfair that we just spoke to?
Well, I think the biggest thing we can do is continue to have great schools, which we do. Our K-12 system's been #1 in the country now for 7 years in a row. We continue to build on our STEM portfolio. We have a lot of STEM classes, a lot of STEM graduates, and we also have a lot of STEM internship programs. Many of the businesses that are here tonight take on a lot of high school kids and get them really interested in STEM that way. We also have colleges and universities here that graduate literally thousands of STEM graduates every year. UMass Amherst and UMass Lowell, between the two of them, are the two largest graduating campuses in the Commonwealth, graduating engineering students. I feel that if we really do what we should do on the student front, the pipeline will continue to flourish, and that's really what people are looking for when they're here.